The plush maroon carpet of Le Petit Chateau was aggressively thick. I knew this because my left kneecap was currently buried in it, soaking in the ambient vibrations of a Michelin-starred dining room. This was it, the precipice. The air around us smelled like truffle oil, expensive regrets, and the burning wax of a candle that probably cost more than my first car. To my right, a sommelier was discreetly pouring a 2015 Bordeaux for a man who looked like he owned a hedge fund. To my left, a string quartet was gently murdering a Vivaldi piece. And right in front of me, sitting across a table draped in impossibly white linen, was Chloe. Chloe, with her perfectly highlighted hair cascading over a silk slip dress I had bought her 3 weeks ago. Chloe, with her phone resting face up next to her oyster fork, the screen illuminating her flawless bored features every 14 seconds with a new Instagram notification. I took a deep, steadying breath. My palms were sweating. My heart was doing a frantic, uneven tap dance against my ribs. I had rehearsed this speech in the shower, in traffic, and to my bewildered golden retriever for the last month. "Chloe," I began, my voice cracking slightly. I cleared my throat, forcing the octave back down to a respectable level. These past 3 years have been an adventure. She didn't look up from her phone screen. Her perfectly manicured thumb swiped up again. A tiny artificial sigh escaped her glossed lips. "Chloe?" I prompted, my knee beginning to ache. "Yes, babe, listening. Keep going," she murmured, double-tapping something on her screen. "Just replying to Madison. She's having a crisis about her veneers." "Focus, Mark." Deep breaths. "Right. Well, since the day we met at that disastrous marketing mixer, you've changed my entire world," I continued, pushing through the suffocating awkwardness of pouring my soul out to the top of a woman's head. I reached into the breast pocket of my tailored suit, a suit I had bought specifically for this exact moment, and wrapped my fingers around the small, square velvet box. The velvet was soft, reassuring. It grounded me. I pulled the box out. I held it between us like a peace offering to a volatile deity. "I've spent the last 6 months planning this," I said, my voice finally finding its footing. "Thinking about our future. Thinking about what you mean to me. I want to build a life with you, Chloe. I want to be the one who stands by your side through everything." That finally did it. The mention of the last 6 months seemed to pierce through the social media fog. She locked her phone, turned it over, and finally looked at me. Her eyes dropped to the velvet box in my hand. For a fraction of a second, time stood still. The restaurant faded away. The string quartet went silent in my mind. This was the movie moment, the crescendo, the part where she gasps, covers her mouth with both hands, and tears of absolute joy stream down her face, ruining her meticulously applied mascara. I flipped the lid of the box open. Nestled in the white satin was a ring I had agonized over. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was an architectural achievement of love. A flawless, 2-carat emerald-cut diamond, flanked by tapered baguettes, set in platinum. It was elegant. It was timeless. It was Grace Kelly. It was Audrey Hepburn. It was everything she had ever put on her dream wedding Pinterest board. Chloe stared at the ring. She didn't gasp. She didn't cover her mouth. She didn't cry. Instead, her eyes narrowed. A tiny, almost imperceptible crease formed between her eyebrows. Her lips parted, but not in awe. "Are you actually kidding me with this thing?" The words dropped into the space between us like a lead balloon. I blinked. Once, twice. The sheer, unadulterated coldness of her delivery short-circuited my brain for a solid 5 seconds. I stayed frozen on my knee, my arm outstretched, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to laugh, call me an idiot, and pull me up for a kiss. I'm sorry?" I stammered, genuinely confused. What? Chloe let out a scoff. It wasn't a polite scoff. It was a sharp, ugly, grating sound that sliced through the hushed ambiance of the dining room. At the next table over, the hedge fund guy stopped mid-sip, his eyes darting toward our table with morbid curiosity. "Mark, look at it," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the box as if it contained a dead rodent. "It's tiny. Honestly, it's insulting." Insulting? My brain scrambled to process the data. List of things I did for this ring. Spent 3 months sourcing an ethically mined, internally flawless stone. Sat through 5 separate design consultations to ensure the setting wouldn't catch on her designer sweaters. Dropped enough money to buy a gently used luxury sedan. "Chloe, it's custom," I said, my voice dropping to an urgent, desperate whisper. I was acutely aware that half the restaurant was now pretending not to watch the slow-motion car crash happening at table 4. "I spent months designing it. It's a flawless emerald cut. It's exactly what I pinned 3 years ago, Mark," she hissed, leaning forward, her eyes flashing with sudden, venomous irritation. "People evolve. Aesthetics change. This looks like something a high school history teacher would give his receptionist girlfriend. It's so basic." Basic. The word felt like a physical slap. The adrenaline that had been keeping me afloat suddenly vanished, replaced by a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. The humiliation was absolute, suffocating, and terrifyingly public. I slowly closed the box. The small snap of the hinge echoed in my ears. I didn't stand up right away. I think my legs forgot how to operate. I just knelt there, looking at the woman I had spent the last 3 years of my life bending over backwards to please. The woman whose rent I subsidized. The woman whose influencer career I bankrolled by paying for professional photographers and trips to Tulum so she could take pictures in front of neon signs. "I see," I managed to say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Don't do the pathetic puppy dog thing, Mark. It's embarrassing," she sighed, waving a dismissive hand. She reached down beside her chair and hoisted up her Hermès Birkin bag. "Let's talk about the Birkin for a second. Do you know how hard it is to get a Birkin? You don't just walk into a store and point at one. You have to play a psychopathic game of retail roulette, buying thousands of dollars of scarves and ugly sandals just to prove to a sales associate that you are worthy of being offered a bag. I played that game for a year. I bought the scarves. I bought the sandals. I secured the bag for her 25th birthday. She cried for 2 hours when she opened it. Now she rummaged through the depths of that very same bag and pulled out a small black velvet box of her own. "You want to know what a real ring looks like?" she asked, her voice dripping with a toxic blend of pity and arrogance. "You want to know what someone who actually values me thinks I deserve?" She didn't wait for my answer. She snapped her box open and shoved it across the table dangerously close to my nose. If my ring was an elegant symphony, this thing was a screeching dubstep remix played through blown-out speakers. It was massive. It was obscenely, violently large. A gaudy cushion-cut monstrosity surrounded by a halo of smaller diamonds, set on a band so thick it looked like a Super Bowl ring. It caught the light of the table candle and practically blinded me with a chaotic, unrefined sparkle. It was the kind of ring you buy when you want everyone in a 3-mile radius to know exactly how much money you spent. It lacked taste. It lacked nuance. It was perfectly Chloe. "What is that?" I asked, my voice flat, the shock beginning to curdle into something far more dangerous. "Marcus gave me this yesterday," she said, a smug, triumphant smile spreading across her face. She pulled the massive rock out of the box and slipped it onto her left ring finger. It looked heavy enough to cause nerve damage. She held her hand out, admiring it under the dim restaurant lighting. Marcus. The name hit me like a shovel to the back of the head. Marcus Thorne. A guy she had met exactly 92 days ago at a digital entrepreneurship mixer. He was loud. He wore aggressively tailored suits with no socks, and his entire personality was based on reciting quotes from podcasts hosted by men who screamed at microphones. He called himself a crypto-visionary. I called him a walking red flag. Over the last 3 months, I had watched Chloe orbit this guy. She started using phrases like high-value man and manifesting generational wealth. She started coming home late, smelling like expensive cigars and cheap excuses. I had ignored the signs. I had rationalized it. I told myself she was just networking. I told myself she was just trying to build her brand. I was a complete, monumental idiot. While I was paying her phone bill and making sure her car insurance was up to date, she was auditioning my replacement, and apparently the replacement had gotten the part. "Marcus proposed?" I asked. I finally forced myself to stand up. The maroon carpet released my knee, but the joint screamed in protest. I brushed off my trousers, moving with a terrifying, mechanical slowness. The world was narrowing down to a tunnel. Just me, Chloe, and that obnoxious rock on her finger. "You let me bring you here? Let me order champagne. Let me get down on one knee. When you got engaged to another man yesterday?" "Oh, stop being dramatic, Mark," she rolled her eyes, taking a delicate sip of her ice water as if we were discussing the weather. "I didn't know you were going to propose tonight. And honestly, it's a good thing you did. It saves us a messy conversation later. You're a sweet guy, Mark. Really. You're comfortable. You're safe." Safe. Another insult disguised as a compliment. "But Marcus?" She sighed dreamily, gazing at the chandelier above us. "Marcus is an alpha. He's a conqueror. He doesn't sit behind a desk writing code all day. He's building an empire." He looked at me, and he knew exactly what I was worth. He didn't hesitate. He didn't settle for whatever that was. She flicked her eyes toward my pocket where I had stashed my ring. "He dropped $250,000 on this yesterday," she continued, her voice rising slightly, ensuring the hedge fund guy at the next table could hear the price tag. She was absolutely glowing with the intoxicating thrill of her own perceived importance. 10 carats, flawless, from House of Valerius. The restaurant disappeared. The low hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, the agonizing screech of the string quartet, it all muted into a dull, rushing static in my ears. House of Valerius. She said it with such reverence, such unadulterated awe. To the rest of the world, House of Valerius was the Mount Olympus of high-end jewelry. It was the boutique where A-list celebrities, foreign dignitaries, and tech billionaires went when they wanted to drop offensive amounts of money on rare stones. There was a velvet rope at the door. You couldn't even look at the display cases without an appointment. To Chloe, getting a ring from House of Valerius wasn't just an engagement. It was a coronation. It proved she had finally secured her spot in the 1%. It proved Marcus was the titan of industry he claimed to be. But to me, House of Valerius wasn't a store. It was my inheritance. My grandfather, a shrewd, brilliant diamond cutter from Antwerp, had built the company from the ground up 50 years ago. When he died, he bypassed my parents, who wanted to sell the brand to a massive conglomerate, and left a 51% controlling stake directly to me. I was 22 when it happened. I didn't care about luxury retail. I loved software. I loved anonymity. So I installed a ruthless, highly efficient board of directors to run the daily operations, kept my name off every public document, and quietly collected the massive quarterly dividends while working a normal tech job and driving a 5-year-old Honda Civic. I liked being normal. I liked knowing people liked me for me, not for a bank account they couldn't comprehend. Chloe had spent the last 3 years thinking I was just a comfortable, mid-level software developer who was mildly good at saving money. She had absolutely no idea that she was currently sitting across from the majority shareholder of the exact company she was trying to use to humiliate me. The irony was so thick, so intensely potent I could practically taste it. I looked at the ring on her finger, really looked at it. I knew that setting. It was the Imperator collection. A flashy, overpriced line we kept in stock specifically for new money clients with more ego than taste. The markup on that specific ring was criminal. "House of Valerius, huh?" I asked, my voice suddenly deadly calm. The panic, the heartbreak, the humiliation. It all evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. "The one and only," Chloe gloated, completely misinterpreting my shift in tone as awe. "Marcus said they closed the store down just for him to browse. The manager poured him vintage champagne. That's how you treat high-net-worth individuals, Mark. Take notes. Closed the store down? Poured him vintage champagne?" I almost laughed. I knew Richard, the flagship manager. Richard wouldn't pour vintage champagne for the Pope unless the Pope dropped a non-refundable deposit first. Marcus was lying through his veneered teeth. But there was a bigger, more pressing issue here. If Marcus had actually dropped $250,000 in cash on that ring yesterday, my phone would have pinged with an automated large transaction alert. I had it set up for anything over $100. My phone hadn't pinged all week, which meant Marcus hadn't paid cash, which meant Marcus, the crypto visionary, had financed it. "Well," I said, leaning forward and resting my knuckles on the white linen tablecloth. "It's certainly a statement piece, Chloe." "It's a lifestyle piece," she corrected me sharply. She reached into her Birkin again, pulling out a compact mirror to check her lip gloss. She was entirely done with me. I was just an obstacle she had successfully navigated. "Look, we're over. I'm packing my things tomorrow while you're at the office. I'll leave the keys on the counter. Don't make this weird, okay? We had some good times, but I'm destined for bigger things." She snapped the compact shut. She looked up at me, offering a painfully fake, condescending smile. And then, she actually winked at me. Winked. "Thanks for dinner, though," she chirped. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I didn't demand the Birkin back or calculate out loud the thousands of dollars she owed me. I just smiled back. It wasn't my usual smile. It was a slow, predatory curving of the lips that didn't reach my eyes. I saw her falter for a microsecond, her perfectly contoured eyebrows furrowed in momentary confusion. She had expected rage. She had expected tears. She had not expected me to look at her like she was a mouse walking directly into a perfectly set trap. "Enjoy the ring, Chloe," I said smoothly, my voice practically purring. "May it bring you exactly what you deserve." I reached into my pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and dropped it onto her pristine white cloth napkin. "For the valet," I said. I turned on my heel and walked away. I didn't look back. I marched past the hedge fund guy, past the string quartet, and out the heavy oak doors of Le Petit Chateau into the cool, crisp night air. My heart was hammering, but not from grief. It was hammering with the electric, terrifying thrill of absolute power. The valet jogged up with my humble, reliable Honda. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door shut, and locked it. The streetlights painted the interior in harsh, yellow shadows. I didn't start the engine. Instead, I reached into my briefcase in the passenger seat and pulled out my laptop. I flipped it open, tethered it to my phone's hotspot, and waited for the screen to glow to life. Chloe wanted a villain. She wanted an alpha. She wanted a conqueror. She had no idea what a conqueror actually looked like. I bypassed my personal email, bypassed my software firm's VPN, and pulled up a heavily encrypted multi-factor authentication portal. I typed in my credentials, scanned my thumbprint on the trackpad, and waited. The screen blinked, transitioning from black to stark white. A sleek, minimalist logo appeared in the center of the screen, followed by the words, "House of Valerius Executive Backend Access. Authorized." If Marcus the Crypto King wanted to play a high-stakes game with my merchandise, in my store, using the woman who had just shattered my heart in front of an audience, then we were going to play by my rules. I cracked my knuckles, my eyes reflecting the harsh light of the monitor. "Let's do a little digging, shall we?" The glow of the laptop screen illuminated the cramped interior of my Honda, casting stark shadows across the steering wheel. To the rest of the world, I was Mark, a mid-level software engineer who packed his own lunches, wore unbranded gray sweaters, and checked his bank app before ordering an extra appetizer. But behind this encrypted portal, logged in through a VPN, routed through a server I owned in Zurich, I was shareholder one. My grandfather, Victor Valerius, arrived in this country with nothing but a leather satchel of uncut stones and a paranoid, obsessive genius for diamond cutting. By the time he passed away, he had built a luxury empire. House of Valerius wasn't just a jewelry brand, it was an institution. We had flagship boutiques in New York, London, Dubai, and Tokyo. We sourced for royalty. We designed for Oscar winners. And when I was 22, freshly graduated with a degree in computer science and zero interest in high society, the lawyers sat me down in a mahogany-paneled room and informed me that Victor had bypassed his squabbling children and left 51% of the company directly to me. I didn't want the fame. I didn't want my face on Forbes. I had seen what wealth did to my aunts and uncles. It made them paranoid, venomous, and hollow. So, I structured a blind trust. I appointed a ruthless shark of a CEO named Eleanor to run the day-to-day, and I stepped into the shadows. I retained ultimate veto power, absolute financial oversight, and a quarterly dividend that looked like a telephone number. I chose to live quietly. I bought a modest townhouse, drove a reliable car, and took a normal job because I actually liked writing code. I wanted to know that if someone loved me, they loved me. Not the Valerius Empire, not the black card, just Mark. Enter Chloe. We met 3 years ago at a dismal corporate mixer in a hotel ballroom. She was a junior marketing assistant back then, wearing a thrifted blazer and drinking cheap Chardonnay. She was funny, sharp, and brutally honest about how much she hated the corporate grind. I fell for her hard and fast. For the first year, things were perfect. We ate takeout on my cheap sofa, binge-watched sci-fi shows, and talked about the future. Then, the algorithm got its claws into her. It started small, a viral TikTok about her morning skincare routine, a few thousand followers, a brand deal that paid her in free exfoliating scrubs. But the dopamine hit was lethal. Within 6 months, the thrifted blazers were gone, replaced by an insatiable hunger for the aesthetic. I became the silent, invisible producer of the Chloe Vance show. She convinced me we needed to move into a $4,500 a month downtown loft because my townhouse didn't have the right natural light for unboxing videos. I paid the rent, masking it as a lucky bonus from my tech job. When she quit her marketing job to become a full-time content creator, I quietly absorbed her car payments, her health insurance, and her phone bill. "It's an investment in my brand, Mark," she would say, pouting her freshly filled lips, which I also paid for. "Once I hit 1 million followers, I'll pay you back tenfold. You're my angel investor." I was an idiot. A lovesick, boiling frog. I held the camera while she twirled in the streets of Paris on a vacation I financed. I stood out of frame at Michelin-starred restaurants while she let her food go cold to get the perfect overhead shot. I bought her the $4,000 DSLR camera, the ring lights, the designer bags she casually draped in the background of her videos to signal her success to strangers on the internet. I gave her the world, carefully wrapped in the illusion that I was just a really supportive, financially responsible boyfriend stretching his paycheck for his girl. And how did she repay 3 years of unconditional financial and emotional support? She met an alpha. It happened exactly 92 days ago. I remember the exact timeline because it was the day the ghost entered our relationship. She had begged me to attend a digital wealth summit with her. It was a glorified scam convention in a rented convention center filled with guys wearing overly tight suits, no socks, and loafers, all trying to sell each other online courses. That was where Marcus Thorne slithered into our lives. Marcus was a walking, talking red flag wrapped in an expensive cologne cloud. He had a perfectly faded haircut, blindingly white veneers, and an Instagram feed entirely composed of him, leaning against cars he didn't own, in front of mansions he was renting on Airbnb by the hour. His bio literally read, "Crypto visionary, generational wealth builder, alpha mindset." He cornered us at the open bar. Within 2 minutes, he was pitching some decentralized finance coin that sounded like a Ponzi scheme. Within 5 minutes, he was subtly insulting me. "Software engineering? That's cool, man," Marcus had said, swirling his whiskey and looking at me with dead, predatory eyes. "I respect the 9-to-5 hustle. The wage cage. Not for me, though. I need freedom. I need to conquer." He turned his gaze to Chloe, dropping his voice an octave. "And I like to surround myself with queens who understand the conqueror mindset." I had laughed it off as pathetic posturing. But I saw the way Chloe looked at him. Her pupils dilated. She didn't see a grifter. She saw a shortcut. Over the next 3 months, Marcus became a phantom in my own home. Chloe started quoting him. "Marcus says diversification is for the poor. Marcus says high-value men don't do chores." She started going to networking dinners that stretched until 2 a.m. When I confronted her, she gaslit me with the precision of a sociopath. I was insecure. I was stifling her growth. I didn't understand the new digital economy. She wanted a man who showered her in visible, obnoxious wealth. A man who bought her $250,000 rings from House of Valerius on a random Tuesday. I stared at the dashboard of the Valerius portal on my laptop. The cursor blinked in the global search bar, waiting for my command. Let's see just how much of a conqueror Marcus Thorne really was. I typed his name into the client registry. To shop at Valerius, even to get past the security guard at the flagship store, you had to have a client profile. We vetted everyone. We didn't just want money. We wanted clean money. Query: Thorne, Marcus. Status: searching global database. Result: 0 matches found. I frowned. That couldn't be right. Chloe had just shoved a ring in my face that I knew intimately. It was the Imperator. It was our most ostentatious piece. A 10-carat cushion-cut diamond surrounded by a double halo, set on a platinum band thick enough to use as brass knuckles. It retailed for exactly $245,000. It wasn't a fake. I knew our cuts. I knew our settings. If he didn't have a profile, he didn't buy it under his name. I changed the search parameters. I navigated to the inventory tracking system for the local flagship store. I pulled up the Imperator collection. There were only 4 10-carat cushion cuts in the entire North American inventory. Query: SKU number 88902 IMP. Status: sold. Date of transaction: yesterday, 4:15 p.m. EST. Gotcha. I clicked on the transaction ID to pull up the invoice. The digital receipt materialized on my screen, detailing the time of sale, the sales associate, a junior guy named Davies, who was definitely getting a talking to about vetting, and the payment method. My eyes scanned down to the billed tow section. I stopped breathing for a second. The ambient street noise outside my Honda faded into absolute silence. I leaned closer to the screen, reading the name once, twice, 3 times, just to make sure I wasn't having a stress-induced hallucination. The ring wasn't billed to Marcus Thorne. The ring wasn't bought with crypto. The ring wasn't bought with cash. The invoice read, "Billed to Chloe Vance. Payment method, Valerius Black Tier Credit Facility." I let out a laugh that sounded slightly manic, echoing off the windshield. The billionaire conqueror, the alpha, the man who knew her worth. He hadn't paid a single red cent for that ring. House of Valerius offered an exclusive, highly predatory, ultra-high limit line of credit for clients who wanted to project wealth they didn't actually have liquid. It was essentially a luxury mortgage. It required pristine credit, a massive income declaration, and a signature tying the debt entirely to the applicant's Social Security number. If you missed a payment, the interest rate ballooned to something completely unethical, and we sent our private asset recovery team to take the merchandise back. I clicked into the financing application attached to the invoice. There it was. Chloe's Social Security number, Chloe's digital signature. Marcus had walked into my store, picked out the most expensive, gaudy ring in the case, and had his new fiancée finance her own engagement ring under the guise of… What? A surprise? I could see exactly how he played it. He probably told her he was setting up a shell corporation for tax purposes and needed her to sign some routine paperwork to transfer assets. Chloe, blinded by the allure of generational wealth and completely financially illiterate, would have signed whatever iPad Marcus shoved in front of her without reading a single line of the terms and conditions. She had dumped me, mocked my custom ring, and bragged about her wealthy new fiancé, all while wearing a $250,000 anchor of debt around her own neck. Debt she couldn't possibly pay. Her influencer income barely covered her iced coffees. I was the one paying her bills. And now, I was the one holding the digital detonator to her entire life. As the majority shareholder, my administrative privileges on the portal were absolute. I could approve loans. I could forgive debts. And most importantly, I could flag any financed transaction as fraudulent with a single click. When a black tier credit line is flagged for fraud, the grace period vanishes. The credit facility is immediately dissolved, and the contract triggers an acceleration clause. It means the entire balance, all $245,000, becomes due immediately, in cash. If the cash isn't wired within 24 hours, the company dispatches a specialized, highly intimidating asset recovery team to physically repossess the item. No court orders. No polite letters in the mail. Just two men in dark suits showing up to take our property back. I looked at the flag transaction button. It pulsed softly on the screen in a warning shade of red. Chloe wanted a ruthless alpha who didn't hesitate. She wanted someone who knew her worth. Well, her worth was currently sitting at a negative $250,000, and I was about to show her exactly how ruthless I could be. The red flag transaction button pulsed on my screen, bathing the cramped interior of my Honda in a bloody digital glow. All I had to do was click it. One click, and the automated machinery of House of Valerius would grind Chloe and Marcus into a fine, humiliating powder. But my finger hovered over the trackpad. I didn't want to just press a button. I wanted to understand the mechanics of the betrayal. I wanted to see exactly how a guy with fake veneers and rented sports cars managed to finesse a $250,000 line of credit onto the shoulders of a woman who thought a Roth IRA was an Irish political faction. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I opened a new tab in the executive portal and accessed the global security mainframe. Every House of Valerius boutique is wired tighter than a Federal Reserve Bank. We have 4K optical cameras positioned at every conceivable angle, recording audio and video directly to a secure cloud server. I filtered by the flagship location. Date: yesterday. Time: 3:45 p.m. Camera: VIP, viewing lounge A. The video feed buffered for a millisecond before snapping into crystal clear resolution. There it was. My store. The marble floors, the velvet drapes, the champagne flutes catching the soft, flattering overhead light. And there they were. Marcus strutted into the frame first, wearing a suit that was aggressively tailored to make his shoulders look broader than they were. He moved with the exaggerated confidence of a man who desperately wanted everyone to look at him. Chloe trailed slightly behind him, her eyes wide, practically vibrating with excitement. She was filming the ceiling, the display cases, the security guard, gathering B-roll for her inevitable "How My Alpha Spends on Me" vlog. A junior sales associate, Davies, poor naive Davies, approached them with a tray of sparkling water and 2 flutes of complimentary champagne. I cranked the volume on my laptop all the way up. "Mr. Thorne, Ms. Vance, welcome to the VIP lounge." Davies' polite, heavily accented voice came through the speakers. "We have the pieces you requested ready for viewing." "Bring out the heavy artillery, Davies," Marcus boomed, clapping his hands together. "My queen here doesn't do understated. We want the biggest, baddest rocks in the vault. Don't waste my time with the peasant inventory." I physically cringed in my car. Peasant inventory. The sheer, unadulterated cringe of this guy was weaponized. Chloe, meanwhile, was glowing. She looked at Marcus like he had just invented fire. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, perfectly positioning her best angle for the discreet selfie she was currently snapping. Davies nodded, maintaining his professional composure, and placed a black velvet presentation board on the glass table. Dead center was the Imperator. 10 carats of flawless, cushion-cut aggression. Chloe gasped. It was the exact gasp I had been waiting for 20 minutes ago at dinner. The gasp she denied me. She dropped her phone, covered her mouth with both hands, and practically lunged across the table. "Marcus," she breathed, her voice trembling. It's a literal chandelier." "It's worthy of you, babe," Marcus said smoothly, picking up the ring and sliding it onto her finger. He didn't get down on one knee. He didn't say anything meaningful. He just presented it like a trophy. "A $250,000, cash value. But to me, you're priceless." Chloe burst into tears. She threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his lapel. I sat in my cold car, watching the woman I loved cry tears of absolute joy over another man. It should have hurt. It should have shattered whatever was left of my heart. But it didn't. Watching it through the sterile lens of a security camera, knowing the absolute financial devastation lurking beneath the surface, it just felt clinical. I was watching a beautifully shot documentary about 2 parasites finding each other in the wild. "So," Marcus said, detaching himself from Chloe's embrace and turning to Davies. "Let's talk logistics. I want this wrapped up today." "Certainly, Mr. Thorne," Davies said, pulling out a sleek silver iPad. "We can process the wire transfer immediately, or if you prefer to use one of your black cards." "Actually, Davies," Marcus interrupted, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial whisper. He leaned across the table. "I'm in the middle of a massive Series B funding round for my crypto exchange. My liquid assets are temporarily locked in an SEC compliance escrow. Standard billionaire red tape. You know how it is." Davies blinked. "I see, sir." "But," Marcus pivoted smoothly, turning to Chloe, who was too busy admiring the ring in the mirror to listen to a word he was saying. "My financial advisors suggested we leverage the asset under a new LLC to avoid capital gains tax. I'm setting up a trust in Chloe's name. It's the ultimate power move for our future." He tapped Chloe on the shoulder. She reluctantly pulled her eyes away from the mirror. "Babe," Marcus said, his tone dripping with fake sincerity. To bypass the SEC lockup, I need to initiate a temporary credit facility through the boutique. It's just a bridge loan for 72 hours until my escrow clears. But because the trust is in your name, I need you to sign the authorization. It's just a formality. Chloe looked at the iPad. She looked at Marcus. For one agonizing second, I thought she might actually engage her brain. I thought she might say, "Wait, why am I taking out a loan for my own engagement ring? Why do you need my social security number if you're so rich?" Instead, she smiled. "Of course, baby. Whatever you need to build our empire." She didn't read a single line of the 50-page digital contract on that screen. She didn't read the APR. She didn't read the catastrophic default penalties. She didn't read the clause that explicitly stated the debt was non-transferable and legally binding to her and her alone. She just took the digital pen from Davies and signed her name with a little heart at the end. "Perfect," Marcus smirked, handing the iPad back to Davies. "Run it." The video feed showed Davies retreating to the manager's office to run the credit check. Chloe had exceptional credit. Why? Because I had spent the last 3 years meticulously paying off her student loans, clearing her credit card debt, and building her credit score so we could eventually buy a house together. I had built the perfect financial profile, and Marcus had just hijacked it to buy a ring I designed from a store I owned. I hit the spacebar, pausing the footage. The image froze on Marcus's face. He was looking at the camera, not directly at it, but just past it, a smug, triumphant sneer plastered across his face. He had pulled off the ultimate grift. He got the girl to finance her own status symbol, and he got to walk around looking like a titan of industry. The cold, heavy stone in my stomach vanished. In its place, a spark ignited. A hot, bright, euphoric flame of pure, unadulterated spite. For 3 years, I had been the nice guy. I had been the safety net, the ATM, the background character in the movie of Chloe's life. I had let her walk all over me because I thought that was what love required. Compromise. Patience. Unconditional support. I was done compromising. I closed the security feed tab. I didn't need to see anymore. I understood the mechanics perfectly. Now, it was time to build the trap. But simply flagging the transaction wasn't enough. If I just canceled the order and sent the repo team to her apartment tomorrow morning, it would be a private humiliation. She would spin it. She would go on Instagram, crying about how the big, evil jewelry corporation made a clerical error and ruined her life. She would play the victim. She always played the victim. No, this needed to be a spectacle. This needed to be a catastrophic public demolition of her brand, her ego, and her fake billionaire fiancé. First things first. I needed to know the battlefield. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I navigated to Chloe's page from my anonymous burner account. I had muted her main page months ago to spare myself the agony of her sponsored energy drink posts. Her profile was already updated. Her bio now read, "Engaged to my king at Marcus Thorne, CEO. Building an empire. Future Mrs. Thorne." Her story had a glowing pink ring around it. I tapped it. The video opened with loud club music. Chloe was in the back of an Uber Black, flashing the 10-carat monstrosity at the camera. Marcus was next to her, holding a bottle of champagne. "Can't believe I'm marrying my soulmate!" she screamed over the music, adding 5 crying emojis to the text overlay. "To all my girls, never settle. Wait for the man who knows your worth." The next slide was a sleek, digital invitation. The merger, Chloe and Marcus. Join us to celebrate our engagement and the merging of 2 empires. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. The Zenith Room, downtown. Dress code, unapologetic luxury. VIP list only. I smiled. It was a terrifying, feral smile that stretched my cheeks until they hurt. The Zenith Room. I knew it well. It was a glass-walled VIP club on the penthouse floor of a downtown skyscraper. It was exclusively populated by influencers, D-list celebrities, and people who bought bottle service they couldn't afford. It was the perfect stage. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. 9:45 p.m. The party was tomorrow night at 8 p.m. That gave me roughly 22 hours to orchestrate the most precise, devastating financial drone strike in the history of modern romance. I minimized the Valerius portal for a moment. Before I unleashed the corporate dogs, I had some personal housekeeping to attend to. I was a software engineer, which meant I understood the value of cleanly severing dependencies before executing a new script. I logged into my personal banking dashboard. Account 1. Joint checking. Balance $12,450. Action: transfer $12,450 to personal savings. Close account. Click. Done. Account 2. Chloe's Platinum Credit Card. Authorized user: Chloe Vance. Current balance: $4,200, mostly Sephora and Uber Eats. Action: revoke authorized user. Lock card. Report as lost, stolen for good measure. Click. Done. Account 3. Auto insurance policy. Action: remove vehicle. 2023 Range Rover Evoque. Cancel policy. Click. Done. Account 4. Verizon Family Plan. Action: suspend line. Chloe Vance. Reason: device stolen. Click. Done. I sat back, exhaling a long, slow breath. The sheer physical relief of cutting those cords was intoxicating. I was shedding weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. With every click, a piece of the pathetic pushover mark died, leaving behind something much colder and much sharper. She was currently riding high on adrenaline, champagne, and a false sense of superiority. But tomorrow morning, when she tried to buy her $9 iced matcha latte, her card would decline. When she tried to call Marcus to complain, her phone would have no service. When she tried to drive her leased Range Rover to the Apple Store, she would be driving uninsured. The invisible safety net was gone. She was in freefall, and she didn't even know it yet. Now, for the main event. I maximized the House of Valerius executive portal. I navigated back to the financing application for SKU number 88902 IMP. I dragged my cursor over the red flag transaction, fraudulent button. But I didn't just click it. As the majority shareholder, I had access to the developer console. I could customize the automated response protocols. Usually, when a fraud flag is triggered, the system automatically dispatches the closest available asset recovery agent immediately. I didn't want them showing up at her apartment at 9 a.m. while she was in her pajamas. That lacked theatricality. I opened the command terminal overlay on the portal. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing out the override commands with the muscle memory of a guy who had spent his entire life writing code. Override auto dispatch. True. Set dispatch. Time: 2030 00 EST. Set dispatch. Location: the Zenith Room, 400 Tower Belvedere, penthouse. I paused. The standard recovery team usually consisted of one agent. Polite, firm, discreet. They were trained to de-escalate and quietly retrieve the asset without causing a scene. But this wasn't a standard recovery. I typed another line of code. Override team size 3. Set agent tier Executive retrieval. Executive retrieval meant the big boys, the guys who usually repossessed million-dollar necklaces from exiled royalty. They didn't do discreet. They wore earpieces, tailored black suits, and possessed the physical presence of professional linebackers. They were trained to walk into a room, secure the perimeter, and extract the asset with zero tolerance for negotiation. I reviewed the code block. Flag the $245,000 transaction as fraudulent. Accelerate the debt, demanding immediate full cash payment. Delay the physical repossession protocol until exactly 8:30 p.m. tomorrow. Send the executive retrieval team directly to the engagement party. It was perfect. A digital symphony of destruction. I moved my mouse over the execute command. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. The sudden noise made me jump, breaking the hypnotic spell of the laptop screen. I picked it up. It was a text from Chloe, sent over iMessage, which meant she was connected to the restaurant's Wi-Fi. Chloe: "Hey, just checking to make sure you're packing your stuff tonight. I want the apartment cleared by noon tomorrow. I have event planners coming over to prep for the party. Please don't leave a mess. And leave the keys on the counter. TX." I stared at the text. Not a single ounce of guilt. Not a shred of remorse for the 3 years we spent together. Not even a simple, "I'm sorry things ended this way." Just a cold, entitled demand to vacate the apartment I paid for so she could prep a party celebrating the man she cheated on me with. She viewed me as nothing more than a mild inconvenience, a stain on the carpet she needed professionally removed before company arrived. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. I looked back at the glowing screen of my laptop. I pressed enter. A loading bar appeared on the screen, filling with a satisfying neon green light. Processing. Authenticating executive override. Fraud protocol initiated. Debt accelerated. $245,000 due immediately. Asset recovery scheduled. 2030 EST. The Zenith Room. Operation locked. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, plunging the car back into the dim, amber glow of the streetlights. It was done. The dominoes were in motion. The trap was set. The steel jaws pulled all the way back, waiting for her to take that one, final, arrogant step. I leaned my head back against the headrest. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box containing the custom emerald-cut ring. The ring she called basic. The ring she called insulting. I popped the box open. The diamond caught the ambient light, sparkling with a quiet, dignified brilliance. It really was a beautiful ring. I had designed it for a woman who didn't exist. I had designed it for a phantom I had projected onto Chloe. I snapped the box shut. Tomorrow morning, I would drop it off at the flagship store and have it melted down. The diamond could go back in the vault. I started the engine of my Honda. The dashboard lit up, the radio automatically resuming a lo-fi jazz playlist. I pulled out of the parking spot, leaving Le Petit Chateau in the rear-view mirror. I didn't go back to the $4,500 a month downtown loft. I didn't go pack my bags. The lease was in my name, but I didn't care about the furniture. She could keep the overpriced mid-century modern sofa. She could keep the aesthetic bookshelves. Instead, I drove to my actual home. The modest, two-bedroom townhouse in the suburbs I had kept rented out to a nice retired couple for the last 3 years. They had moved out a week ago, and it was currently empty. I had planned to sell it to help pay for Chloe's dream wedding. I parked in the driveway, walked up the steps, and unlocked the front door. The house smelled like fresh paint and quiet solitude. It was empty, echoing, and perfectly, wonderfully mine. I threw my keys on the counter, walked into the unfurnished living room, and lay down right in the middle of the hardwood floor. I stared up at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Chloe was going to wake up and realize her phone didn't work. She would brush it off. Tomorrow afternoon, her credit card would decline at the salon. She would blame the bank. Tomorrow evening, she would put on her most expensive dress, walk into the Zenith room, and declare herself the queen of the city. And at exactly 8:30 p.m., I was going to burn her fake empire to the ground. I closed my eyes, a calm, euphoric smile spreading across my face. And for the first time in 3 years, I slept like a baby. The Zenith room sat on the 45th floor of the city's most pretentious skyscraper, an architectural middle finger of glass and steel piercing the downtown skyline. It was the kind of venue that didn't have a sign on the street level, just a discreet black elevator bank flanked by 2 men who looked like they benched small cars for fun. To get in, you needed to be on a list, or you needed a net worth that made the list irrelevant. Chloe and Marcus were on the list, because Marcus had undoubtedly promised the event coordinator a shout-out on his Instagram and future equity in whatever vaporware crypto token he was peddling this week. I, on the other hand, didn't need the list. I arrived at 7:45 p.m., wearing a bespoke midnight blue Tom Ford suit I had kept in the back of my closet for board meetings I rarely attended. I looked nothing like the comfortable software engineer Chloe had discarded. I bypassed the velvet rope, approached the head of security, and quietly palmed him a heavy matte black House of Valerius corporate card. The card had a microchip that, when tapped against a standard NFC reader, bypassed normal VIP protocols and flashed a priority access code reserved for diplomats and billionaires. The security guard scanned it. His eyes widened a fraction of an inch, darting from the screen to my face. He gave a sharp, respectful nod, unclipped the velvet rope, and personally escorted me to the express elevator. When the doors opened on the 45th floor, the base of a deep house track hit me right in the chest. The Zenith room was a sensory overload of neon, mirrored ceilings, and panoramic views of the city grid. The air smelled of overpriced synthetics, sandalwood cologne, hairspray, and the metallic tang of dry ice pouring from VIP bottle service sparklers. The room was packed with the worst people on the eastern seaboard. Influencers live streaming their own faces, reality TV rejects clinging to relevance, and finance bros aggressively networking near the bar. I didn't step onto the main floor. Instead, I handed the hostess a $100 bill and pointed to the mezzanine level, a wraparound balcony with tinted glass partitions that overlooked the main floor. It was meant for private parties, but money speaks a universal language. Within 2 minutes, I was sitting in a plush leather booth in the shadows, a glass of Macallan 18 in my hand, looking directly down at the epicenter of the circus. Chloe was holding court. She was wearing a silver sequined dress that looked like it had been painted onto her body, practically glowing under the club's LED lighting. She looked stunning. Objectively, flawlessly beautiful. And for the first time in 3 years, looking at her didn't trigger a single flutter in my chest. I just saw a complete stranger. She was surrounded by a gaggle of women who looked like carbon copies of each other, all of them staring with rabid, envious hunger at the massive 10-carat rock dragging down her left hand. "I mean, I literally can't even lift my arm," I heard Chloe project, her voice carrying over the thumping bass. She lifted her hand, letting the club lasers catch the diamond, throwing fractured rainbows across the faces of her friends. "Marcus he doesn't compromise. He told the jeweler, 'Give me the biggest one in the vault, or I walk.' That's alpha energy, girls. Never settle for a man who asks for your budget." Her friend Madison, the one with the alleged veneer crisis, leaned in. "Is it true what you posted? $250,000? Chloe did a practiced, humble little shrug that made me want to gag. $245,000, to be exact. And he paid cash, obviously. He's so anti-credit. He says debt is a tool to keep the masses poor." I took a slow, savoring sip of my scotch. Anti-credit. Debt is a tool to keep the masses poor. Marcus really was a poet. Marcus himself was currently at the bar, flanked by 3 guys in overly tight shirts. He was holding a cigar that wasn't lit, because the Zenith room was strictly non-smoking, but using it as a prop to point at people while he talked. He was doing his visionary routine, waving his hands, entirely unaware that the digital guillotine was currently suspended roughly 3 inches above his perfectly gelled head. My phone buzzed. 8:15 p.m. 15 minutes to impact. I watched Chloe for a few more minutes. Beneath the gloating and the champagne sipping, I could see the cracks forming. She kept glancing down at her phone, her brow furrowing. She tapped the screen aggressively, shook it, and shoved it back into her clutch. A few minutes later, she pulled out a credit card to pay a passing waitress for a tray of shots. The waitress ran the card on a handheld terminal. The terminal beeped an angry red. The waitress frowned, said something, and Chloe's face flushed a deep crimson. She snatched the card back, laughed it off as a bank security freeze, and flagged Marcus down to pay for the shots. Marcus swaggered over, pulled out a sleek metal card, and tapped the machine. It went through. He kissed her cheek, completely oblivious to the fact that her phone was a brick, her credit was locked, and her car insurance was currently non-existent. It was time to go down there. I finished my scotch, stood up, and buttoned my suit jacket. I walked down the curved glass staircase, descending into the belly of the beast. Nobody noticed me at first. I was just another guy in a nice suit navigating the crowded floor. I wove through the throngs of people posing for TikToks, heading straight for the VIP section where Chloe and Marcus were now standing together, holding up fresh glasses of champagne for a photographer. "Okay, guys, give me power couple," the photographer shouted, snapping away. "Look at each other. Look rich." I stepped directly into the frame. The photographer lowered his camera, looking annoyed. "Hey, man, VIP's only here. You're in the shot." Chloe turned around, ready to snap at whoever was ruining her moment. Her eyes landed on me. The annoyance instantly morphed into absolute, paralyzed shock. Her jaw physically dropped. For a second, she just stared, her brain struggling to reconcile the man standing in front of her with the man she had dumped in a restaurant 24 hours ago. I didn't look like Mark the pushover. I looked like money. Old, quiet, dangerous money. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. Marcus turned around, his fake, camera-ready smile faltering. He looked me up and down, taking in the Tom Ford suit, the Audemars Piguet watch I had retrieved from my safety deposit box that morning, and the look of absolute, chilling calm on my face. He immediately puffed out his chest, stepping in front of Chloe in a territorial display that belonged on a National Geographic documentary. "Can I help you, bro?" Marcus asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a private event. Not really the vibe for the IT department." A few of Chloe's friends giggled nervously in the background. I didn't look at Marcus. I looked at Chloe. "Hello, Chloe," I said, my voice smooth, cutting through the ambient noise of the club. "I hope I'm not interrupting the merger of your empires." Chloe recovered her composure, her shock hardening into defensive anger. "What are you doing here, Mark? Seriously, how did you even get in? You are stalking me now? Because that's pathetic, even for you." "I just came to congratulate the happy couple," I said, offering a tight, polite smile. "And to see the ring in its natural habitat." I gestured toward her left hand. She instinctively pulled it closer to her chest, glaring at me. "You saw the ring last night," she snapped. "When you were trying to give me that tiny, embarrassing little chip you bought. You need to leave, Mark. You're embarrassing yourself. And honestly, it's creepy. We're done. I told you to pack your stuff and leave the keys." "Oh, I left the keys," I replied smoothly. "And canceled the internet. And the electricity. And the water. You might want to pick up some candles on your way home tonight. Assuming you still have the Range Rover, of course." Chloe froze. Her eyes widened. The memory of her declined credit card and the dead cell phone suddenly clicked into place. You turned off the power? You took me off the insurance?" "I'm just protecting my assets, Chloe," I said, shrugging lightly. "As Marcus would say, you have to cut the dead weight to maintain a high-value portfolio." Marcus took a step forward, shoving his finger into my chest. Or he tried to. I caught his wrist mid-air, my grip tightening just enough to make his eyes water. He was all protein powder and mirror muscles. He had absolutely zero practical leverage. "Listen to me, wage slave," Marcus hissed, trying to pull his arm back and failing. "I don't know how you got past the bouncers, but you're leaving right now before I have security drag you out by your cheap tie. You don't belong in this tax bracket. You're out of your league. Look at her." He gestured to Chloe with his free hand. "She's wearing $250,000 on her finger. I drop your annual salary on a Tuesday. Now let go of me and walk away." I released his wrist, letting him stumble back a half step. I didn't break eye contact. $250,000, I repeated, tasting the words. I looked at my watch. It was 8:29 p.m. "That's a lot of cash, Marcus. You must have an incredible relationship with your bank. No credit, right? Just pure liquid capital." Marcus adjusted his cuffs, trying to regain his composure in front of the crowd that was rapidly forming around us. Influencers smell drama like sharks smell blood. Phones were already out, recording the confrontation. "I don't discuss my financials with pedestrians," Marcus sneered. "But yes, cash, because I'm not a peasant." I looked at Chloe. She was looking at Marcus with complete adoration, emboldened by his defense of her honor. She crossed her arms, the 10-carat ring catching the strobe lights. "You should really read the things you sign, Chloe," I said softly, almost sympathetically. "What?" she scoffed. "What are you talking about?" My watch hit 8:30 p.m. Right on cue, the heavy double oak doors at the entrance of the Zenith room didn't just open. They were pushed open with a force that made the hinges groan. The security guards at the front didn't try to stop them. They couldn't. 3 men walked into the club. They were not dressed for a party. They wore matching, immaculately tailored black suits with black ties. They moved with a synchronized, predatory grace that instantly sucked the air out of the room. They didn't look at the crowd. They didn't look at the flashing lights. Their eyes were locked on a single GPS beacon transmitting from the RFID chip embedded in the platinum band on Chloe's finger. The executive retrieval team. The crowd naturally parted for them. It was instinctual. You don't stand in the way of a freight train. The music seemed to dial down, or maybe my brain just tuned it out, focusing entirely on the 3 suits marching directly toward our VIP section. Chloe noticed the shift in the room's energy. She uncrossed her arms, looking over my shoulder. "Who are they?" Marcus turned around. The color instantly drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He recognized the suits. He recognized the matte black leather briefcase the lead agent was carrying. The lead agent, a man who looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast, stopped exactly 2 feet away from Chloe. His 2 partners flanked him, forming an impenetrable wall of muscle and bespoke wool. "Chloe Vance?" the lead agent asked. His voice was deep, devoid of any emotion, cutting through the club music like a scalpel. Chloe blinked, looking from the agent to Marcus, then to me. "Yes? Who is asking?" The agent reached into his breast pocket and produced a laminated holographic badge. "Asset Recovery, House of Valerius. We are executing a corporate reclamation order on SKU number 88902 IMP. The 10-carat cushion-cut diamond ring currently on your left hand. The words hung in the air. Asset recovery. House of Valerius. Reclamation order. A murmur rippled through the crowd of influencers. Phones were elevated, recording every agonizing second. Chloe let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. I'm sorry, what? There's been a mistake. My fiancé bought this from me yesterday. He paid cash. Tell them, Marcus. She turned to Marcus. Marcus was currently backing away, his eyes darting frantically toward the fire exit sign, glowing red at the back of the room. He didn't say a word. Mr. Thorne did not pay cash, Ms. Vance, the agent stated, his voice carrying clearly to every recording smartphone in a 10-foot radius. He unlatched the black briefcase and pulled out a digital tablet. Mr. Thorne initiated a black-tier credit facility to acquire the asset. However, as his own credit profile did not meet the minimum requirements, the credit facility was opened under your name, utilizing your social security number. Chloe stared at the agent, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Under my name? That's impossible. I didn't authorize a loan. You signed the digital contract at 4:15 p.m. yesterday in our flagship VIP lounge, Ms. Vance, the agent said, tapping the tablet and turning the screen toward her. There it was. Blown up in high definition. Chloe's signature with the little heart at the end, right beneath the terrifying block of text outlining a $245,000 debt. No, 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 Chloe stammered, panic finally piercing through the champagne haze. She whipped around to Marcus, grabbing his arm. Marcus, tell them! Tell them about the SEC escrow! Tell them you're paying it! Marcus tried to pull his arm away, his alpha persona completely dissolving into pure panicked cowardice. Look, babe, it's just a misunderstanding. The funds are tied up. The blockchain is congested. Just give them the ring, we'll sort it out tomorrow. Give them the ring? Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking. Marcus, they're saying I owe $250,000. Ms. Vance, the agent interrupted, stepping forward, invading her personal space just enough to establish absolute dominance. At 8 p.m. tonight, the internal system flagged this transaction as fraudulent. Per the terms of the contract you signed, the grace period has been revoked. The acceleration clause has been triggered. The entire balance of $245,000 is due immediately. The agent looked at her with dead eyes. Will you be paying via wire transfer tonight, Ms. Vance? Chloe looked like she was going to vomit. The sequined dress suddenly looked ridiculous, a cheap costume on a terrified little girl. She looked at the crowd. She looked at Madison, whose phone was pointed right at her face, recording the entire downfall. I don't have that kind of money, Chloe cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I'm an influencer. I get paid in brand deals. Marcus is the billionaire. Take his money. Marcus Thorne, the agent read from his tablet, not even looking at the sweating man, has a recorded net worth of negative $14,000, 3 defaulted auto loans, and 0 liquid assets associated with any recognized financial institution. He is not a party to this contract, Ms. Vance. You are. The crowd gasped collectively. It was a beautiful, synchronized sound. Begatishev, $14,000. The Alpha. The Conqueror. He was a broke fraud, leasing his lifestyle on credit cards, and the entire VIP section of the Zenith room just heard it. Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He shoved past Chloe, practically sprinting toward the VIP exit, abandoning his queen to the corporate wolves. Marcus! Chloe screamed, reaching for him, but he was already gone, disappearing into the crowd like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. She turned back to the agent, sobbing hysterically. Please, it's a scam. He scammed me. You can't do this. Because you cannot provide immediate cash payment, the agent continued. completely unfazed by her tears. "We are repossessing the asset. Furthermore, because the item depreciates the moment it leaves the showroom, you are legally liable for the 20% restocking and depreciation fee." The agent paused, letting the math settle over her. "You currently owe House of Valerius $49,000, payable within 30 days. Or we will garnish your future wages and seize any available assets. The ring, please." Chloe was hyperventilating. She looked at her hand. The massive, gaudy diamond that was supposed to be her ticket to the 1% was now a radioactive anchor of debt. She looked at me, for the first time since I walked up to the VIP section. She really looked at me. Her eyes were wide, pleading, desperate. The arrogance was gone. The condescension was gone. She was the junior marketing assistant in the thrifted blazer again, begging for someone to save her. "Mark," she choked out, reaching a trembling hand toward me. "Mark, please, you have to help me. You have savings. You can pay the fee. Please, Mark. They're going to ruin my life." I stood there, my hands casually resting in my pockets. The club lighting flashed, illuminating the tear tracks running through her foundation. "I'm sorry, Chloe," I said, my voice projecting clearly so the cameras could catch every word. "I'm just a comfortable, safe guy who writes code. I don't have alpha money, and honestly, even if I did, you made it very clear last night that you don't settle for my kind of support." "Please," she wailed, dropping to her knees on the sticky club floor, practically grabbing my pant leg. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. He manipulated me. You're the one I want, Mark. Please don't let them do this." It was the ultimate catharsis, the closure I didn't even know I needed. Seeing her on her knees, begging for the safety net she had spent 3 years taking for granted, completely cured me of whatever lingering affection I had left. "Ms. Vance." The ring. The agent extended a gloved hand. It was not a request. Chloe, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken, slowly slid the 10-carat diamond off her finger. The moment it left her skin, she looked physically smaller, stripped of her armor. She dropped it into the agent's palm. The agent inspected the stone briefly, nodded to his partners, and placed the ring into the black briefcase. It snapped shut with a sound like a gavel hitting a judge's block. "Thank you for your cooperation," the agent said. "Expect the invoice for the remaining balance via certified mail tomorrow." The 3 suits turned in unison and marched out of the club, parting the sea of stunned influencers, taking the $250,000 lie with them. The silence in the VIP section was deafening. Even the DJ had lowered the track, sensing the catastrophic shift in the room's energy. Everyone was staring at Chloe, who was still kneeling on the floor, weeping into her hands. Then, the absolute cherry on top of the sundae. The club manager, a frantic-looking man with a clipboard, pushed his way through the crowd, flanked by 2 bouncers. He marched directly up to where Marcus had been standing, then looked down at Chloe. "Ms. Vance?" the manager barked. Chloe looked up, her mascara running down her face like black ink. "What? What else?" "Mr. Thorne just ran out the back exit," the manager said, his face red with anger. "And the credit card he put on file for the open bar and bottle service just declined for insufficient funds. The tab is $12,000. Are you putting another card down, or are we calling the police?" The crowd erupted into whispers. Madison actually laughed out loud, pointing her phone down at her former best friend. Chloe let out a sound that wasn't human, a guttural shriek of pure, unadulterated despair. She collapsed onto the floor, curling into the fetal position, her sequined dress catching the sticky residue of spilled alcohol. I looked down at her one last time. "Like you said last night, Chloe," I said softly, dropping the $100 bill I had used to tip the hostess onto the floor next to her head. "Enjoy the ring." May it bring you exactly what you deserve. I turned my back on the VIP section. I walked toward the exit, the sea of influencers parting for me just as they had for the repossession agents. Nobody said a word. Nobody tried to stop me. I stepped into the elevator, the heavy doors sliding shut, cutting off the club music and the sound of Chloe's sobbing. The descent to the ground floor was silent, fast, and incredibly smooth. When I stepped out onto the street, the night air was cool and crisp. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with freedom. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an automated email from the House of Valerius executive portal. Status update: asset recovered. Account flagged for collections. I smiled, swiped the notification away, and walked into the city. I was Mark again. But this time, I wasn't anyone's safety net. I was the guy who owned the net, and I had just learned exactly when to pull it away.